All right, this evening I have Seth Fessler, one of my friends. He's decided to build his own house with an interesting type of construction layout and material. I'm really excited for this because uh, it's kind of cool. Some really interesting elements brought together in this build. Let me bring Seth forward. Seth, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well tonight.
Oh, good.
So,
I'm
yeah.
glad to hear that. So, what was the process for the how you were going to have your layout of the house? What materials were you going to do? What give me the whole story.
Oh geez, the whole story.
The whole story.
I was going to reference the jerk there for a second, but decided not to. Uh, I've always been a huge fan of courtyard style homes.
Mhm.
So I had a lot of friends growing up that were from Korean descent or were from Korea. A lot of people in my church too that were uh, in the region I was at. There was a state college in the town I grew up at, and so we had a lot of people from a lot of different countries. And so Korea was one of those ones where they talked a lot about their homes that they loved, like their traditional homes,
Mhm.
or homes they'd go and visit their grandparents in. And I looked them up, and I'm not going to pronounce it correctly, but it's like a Hanok or Hanok. Uh, and so a lot of it are natural elements like timber frame style stuff with clay finish, plaster, stuff like that. Ondul is their kind of radiant floor heating setup that they use. And they have old school types of Ondul, which are more like things that heat underneath the house that come from like a little outside kitchen that they light a fire at. And that
Mhm.
actually heats the house. And then they have more modern stuff like, radiant floor heat, tubing, electric, like heat in their flooring now too. But it's a common theme. I really enjoyed the structural layouts of like Southwest Spanish missions. And there's kind of an organization between Spanish missions and Hanoks that had to do a lot with like defensibility or having multiple generations live within a home too, and then having very structured assigned functions for different parts of the house. And I really
So,
like that.
a house with an open center, kind of like this.
Yeah, and usually they don't have all four sides enclosed unless it's like in a city proper. Um,
Oh, okay.
but
So
one of
more
my
more like that.
favorite memories, yeah, more like that.
Okay.
And my house is nowhere as intricately designed as that. We don't have the roofing style for that or the amount of uh, the wood design in there, not as much. There'll be some similar designs for the finish work when it comes to plaster and wooden trim outlining things.
Mhm.
That'll be part of the house. But like all the really fine, intricate stuff, like within the windows and the doors there, like with the paper screens, I'm not doing it all.
Yeah.
So I took the functional layout of things. One of my favorite little memories when it came to the house that I wanted
Mhm.
came from it was a movie by Ang Lee that he directed in the 90s called Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. And it was about this widowed father that was like the head chef of like a restaurant. And at the beginning of the movie, favorite part of the movie, you see him prepping a bunch of different meals for a Sunday meal for his three daughters that are all grown up. And you see kind of like it's in a Seiwan or quadrangle, uh, which is a layout where you have a courtyard style home in the middle of like a walled off area within a city. And it was a Vietnamese film, I believe. And so that house was in Vietnam. Oh, sorry, no, I might have been Singapore actually. People couldn't figure it out. But if you look up "Eat, Drink, Man, Woman" opening scene, like that
Mhm.
was my like dream of a house. They had like the just huge crocks of fermenting sauces and different foods layered about. in one area of the property, and then they had chickens in another area. There was a lot of permaculture stuff actually there that I thoroughly enjoyed. So that was the beginning of like my draw to that. And then I was the second youngest of 9 kids. And I really like the idea of there being different areas and segments of a house build for different age groups and generations. Maybe even a place where you could hide and get away from all of your noisy siblings. So, and that's what I spent most of my youth was spent either building snow tunnels or tree forts, and then grabbing a book and then going and reading there in peace and quiet. So that was a huge part of that. So my wife, Katie, and we moved to Malad in 2014, and we were able to get a piece of property that had a pretty good layout. It was 99 by 330 feet.
Uh-huh.
And we went through, once we had the property, for years I've been like storing information, looking at different building, like concepts, doing all the research, like filing stuff away. Like if this was an option, I'm going to do this, or if this isn't an option, I'm going to do that. And I had a lot of stuff there. And then once we got the land, Katie would pump the brakes and she's like, hey, like, I'm going to give input now. And up until that point, she's like, okay, that sounds good. Okay, that sounds good. No, but when it was time, she was like, all right, I'm giving input now. And so over the course of probably 2 years, as we paid off the land, we went through a few different build designs, and primarily the tool that we used for designing is SketchUp. And so I drew probably over 50 designs, and Katie critiqued them, and we came down to about 3 or 4 layouts that we really liked.
Uh-huh.
Let's see, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And so I have a lot of different little saves here that I did, and some future ones too, where we might do an addition or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Let's look at the roof area calculation. So basically I have the shell of the house here. No windows, no doors, but I use this to measure the square footage of the roof.
Okay.
When we were going to do a gable roof, we swapped to a shed roof after a while. So SketchUp, this is just their free trial version. And so I just used it a lot. Okay. Oh. This was a different phase build.
That looked like a lot
more than I did. Yeah.
Complex.
Okay. Yeah, that's phase 2. First draft. Model. There we go. So this is it without the roof. And so basically the blocks in and of themselves, they're called the perfect block. I originally was going to do a pumice-crete build, which is where you actually mix a lot of, you mix a certain combination of concrete and pumice. And it creates a very porous material that adds fire resistance and insulation. But I would have been pouring it 1 to 2 foot or 1 to 1.5 foot thick walls, still needing reinforcement. And it was inexpensive from a cost standpoint, but there came this line and threshold where the amount of labor costs would have just been ridiculous. And I had a few health issues kick up through the last years where like I'd still be building like the first or second layer of this thing if I'd gone with pumice-crete. My father and I, it was about 1 year or 2 after I moved to Malad, we actually helped pour and form a pumice-crete way station at Hess Pumice. Let me see if I can pull that up. There may or may not be an image of it. And no, I'm not finding it. You edit this after we're done. Right?
I don't edit things.
Oh, boo. All right. So while I'm looking for that, keep asking me questions.
So you were initially planning on doing Pumice-crete. I'm assuming it wouldn't be with this specific build because this one has only 8-inch thick walls versus 1 foot thick walls. When did you decide that, or how did you find out about Perfect Block?
Well, so I rehabbed a bunch of Navy guys back in my early marriage when I was down in Utah. A lot of them did Halo operations, and they had some pretty good hookups with friends and stuff like that they knew. And one of them knew that I was looking at doing Pumice-crete, and he actually sent me a little message and said, hey, like, we talked about how intensely or how labor intense Pumice-crete would be. Have you checked out these blocks? And so they were like some of my Navy friends that we served with retired, and they helped develop this block. So and that was it. I found the block and I did the research. It had the fire resistance that I wanted, the mold resistance. It had the structural strength. The blocks, the Perfect block has a 4-hour, 4,000 degree burn rate. It is mold resistant. It is pest resistant. It is just all the things that I wanted in a house. And it seemed like the blocks, you've lifted the blocks before. You've helped me.
About 40 pounds?
Yeah, they're about 40 pounds. If it's raining and stuff like that, it can hold a little bit water, but they dry pretty quick.
Right.
Part of their desirability.
Very breathable.
Yeah, exactly. Can you see what I'm sharing right now?
No, just a second.
Okay. Oh, let me stop sharing on this first. And then I will go like this. Okay. So if you notice the building here,
that's a very thick roof.
It is. And so they poured the roof out of Pumice-crete. They did Pumice-crete. They did bracing across it. Anyway, so that's the Pumice-crete building. I liked the stone and plaster finish. But it, like I said, like thick. It's a thick pour, a thick roof, heavy, all that stuff.
That looked crazy.
Yeah. And you walk in there. I don't know if you've ever been inside that way station.
No.
But really easy to control the temperature in there. It has good R value, not a lot of thermal gaps at all, which is really important. That's part of what provides the R value with the Perfect block is the fact that there's no real thermal gaps, you know? So you don't have those bridging thermal gaps that transfers heat or allows leaks, stuff like that. It doesn't occur in the same way. And so when I talked to the guys at the Perfect block, they discussed, like, you know, you have the regular college established R value, you know, where they take a chunk of the material, they put it in their machine, they establish the R value. And then you have the E established R value, or however they defined it. And they had the testing and the qualification done for the E established R value or whatever it was. They just didn't have to pay the yearly fee for it. You know, the college testing R value was completely sufficient. You know, like my external walls are in like the 30s to 40s for just that. Add the thermal mass multiplier from the concrete poured in there and the lack of thermal gaps. Like if you wanted to do an infrared scan or an air pressure test, it's calculated to be so much higher. But there's a whole bunch of bureaucracy that comes with that.
Bureaucracy? We don't have bureaucracy in America.
Right? And those guys, the guys down at Perfect Block, just they have no need for that nonsense. They have a lot of confidence in their material. And if you ever do it, and they're great. I went down there a couple of years ago. I helped build a house for about a week, like 5 weekdays. And I got a tour of the facilities, and I got to go inside of a house that had been finished and kind of feel like what was the sound like, what was the thermal control like. And it was like 108, 109 on one of those days too. And the AC was barely running in that house. They had a good passive solar design and block. And so it was good. I was really impressed. And they greeted me with open arms,
That was down in Arizona.
Oh yeah. And that's the people that you chatted with when you helped me pick up that extra load of block down there.
Right.
And so that was the next stage, was me going there. And because I looked at a lot of their YouTube stuff, they didn't have as much back then, but I looked at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks so great. I was already starting to struggle with my health a bit. And that's when my tremors were starting to get really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, this is a great theory. If I want to do this myself, or mostly myself and friends, as it's turned out, what would it actually look like? So going down there, getting the experience, kind of like you help them build a house. They kind of show you how they do their, like, okay, well, let's work around this, their problem solving, things like that. And it was just amazing. There was a couple from Georgia down there when I visited too, that were really interested in the block because of how well it handles humidity.
Yeah.
And it was just a good experience. So after that, I went forward with that material. So I went back to SketchUp. I changed the wall thickness. We changed the layout a bit. We went through one or two more designs before we ordered the blocks. And it's funny because the final design we actually ended up landing on. Let me reshare the screen. We got inspired by a lakeside cabin we stayed at Bear Lake. It was an Airbnb, and we walked in there, and it was so close to what we had wanted, just for layout and flow and orientation on the land too, that we were like, oh, all right, we can do this. So I actually measured stuff out by foot measuring things. I drew it all out, took some pictures. And I drew this all up on SketchUp, and I used SketchUp to calculate all the blocks that I needed. And I went with a Hanok style layout where we have very sectional quadrants. On the right side here, we have our living room, our dining room, our kitchen, and our utility laundry room. And that's going from southwest, northwest, northeast, southeast, and just this half thing over here. Oh, you can see my mouse. That works. So this is the living room. This is the dining room. This is the kitchen, laundry area, utility room. And then as you come in through this door, you have the bathroom area right here. So we actually have a toilet closet and a shower room, and then a double sink area. And over here, we have the residential area. We have 4 bedrooms, one for each kid. And we have a smaller base layout you see in there. And then across so each bedroom, there is bedroom space on the floor. And then from here over to here, over the hallway, we actually had an area for a loft to be. So the loft actually goes from this tip of the wall here, across here, over here. So we have about 110 square feet in each bedroom. And if we ever want to sell it, basically, we will have to put a divider door or a walkway carved into these walls here.
Yeah.
And over here to combine the rooms so they qualify as the proper square footage with ceiling height. But for now, it's good enough. We have 4 kids. They've all tested the lofts. I mean, your kid knows about the loft, and they love it. So,
without the loft, it's about a 6 by 6 room? Is that
No, it's 7 by 7.5.
7?
So it's about 49 square feet, a little bit more on the base level. And then the loft area is 9 by 7.
Okay.
So,
and with the loft in there, it's about a 7-foot ceiling on the first floor.
yeah, where the loft is at, it's about 7 feet. Hallway is 7 feet too. And that was the minimum height we wanted to go with. And that's, like when I looked up Idaho minimum hallway height, stuff like that. That's what it popped up.
Yeah.
So not super great for taller people, but I am not a tall person. And
Yeah.
I don't know any people that are 6'10" or higher. But anyway, so we have that designed, and then you come like right through here, and we have the master bedroom area, and that it looks pretty identical to what you've helped build and pour, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost identical.
Yep. And so we have a toilet closet here, a shower room here, double sink, master bedroom area. One thing that I really liked about the block setup too, we did a lot of threaded rod through 2x8s and 2x6s throughout the house for mounting stuff on and or for building into. So we have basically threaded rod all throughout the house that we'll put face plates on or 2x8s. And then we just anchor all the shelving, floating shelves, everything attached to those points. And then it's built structurally into it. So one thing I did also is I actually used the 6-inch block for all my internal walls. I've listened a lot to Joe Stibrook. He's a Canadian house guy, and he goes over a lot of like what the perfect wall is, like how to handle moisture, things like that. And I liked the idea of not mixing materials. So unless I'm dealing with treated or water treated wood, there's none of that as the structural ties in the house at all. So literally all these walls you see, even this half wall here, and then over here with this utility room, all that jazz, it's tied into the foundation, tied into the roof. And so let's see if I can pull up. Messages from Katie.
So you've got a radiant heating floor is what you're planning on doing in this house as well, right?
Yes.
And because the perfect block, you pour the concrete into that and it ties into the floor. Your radiant heating floor is also heating your walls, and your perfect block is also your roof. So your radiant heating is heating the entire house through that single material that you're building your house out of, right?
Yep. And so it's different when it comes to the walls and the roof.
Mhm.
So you take a look at the passive solar designs, and all the 6-inch blocks and all the concrete in them, everything that goes up the walls and into the roof, those are insulated on
Right.
both sides. I mean,
Mhm.
we could expose half of it if we wanted to and like chip away at the foam component or the ICCF component on one side and expose that to get radiant heat from it.
Mhm.
And we have a plan to do that on one strip across the bedrooms, just for that to get some extra, heat on that upper level.
Right.
But beyond that, it's a thermal mass holder. It's storage. It heats up through the day. It stores it up there. Then at night, when it cools down, it goes from the roof down and out the walls, out of the floor. So it is a thermal battery to a degree.
Right.
And that's one reason why we wanted to do the roof out of it too. Not only does it provide really good strength per square inch when you do the roof out of it, but it
Mhm.
also ties together and it offers insane wind resistance. And so just doing the walls alone with the block, not tying a block roof into it, you get 250-mile-per-hour wind resistance.
Wow.
So, which is usually what they top scale that stuff at. But when you do the roof out of it, tied concrete, you get insane protection. And I looked at spider ties and stuff like that too, and pouring a concrete roof. And then eventually I was just like, hey, Could I just do it with the block too? It's insulated. I could tie it in there, and it's fire resistant. And fire resistance, especially for 4 hours at 4,000 degrees, with that degree of wind resistance, huge fan. So it
Yeah,
just marked all the boxes for me.
yeah. I just saw a video of a building just burning down. It looked like it was stick built, and I'm like, I don't think Seth's going to have to worry about that.
Yeah. Like when I did the foundation, I did earthquake cages, rebar tied together in certain layers and forms. And then I did rebar across, the thinner parts of the slab. And I poured a 6-inch slab too. So
Right.
the footings were all 2.5 by 3 feet deep. And then we have the 6-inch slab. It's a thick, hardy one. And I did, they're called Monoslab Easy Form for my foundation. It creates an insulated slab on grade. Back in South Dakota, we call that a Minnesota slab. So, anyway, and so that's what prevents the heaving is the insulation all around the footings. And yeah, that was a huge part of it too. So we have our earthquake resistance, we have our moisture control. To a degree, the walls could get wet and they could dry themselves out. Joe Stibrick talks about that a lot. You want a degree of breathability or at least some sort of flow. And so one thing that really made a difference, especially locally, is we had the we had the Limestrong plaster, which I believe has changed its name now to something else. But they are a Pozzolan-based plaster that I'll be using. And there's no plastic in it at all. And so one thing that Joe Stibrick talks about a lot is, like what happens when you have something like plaster that has, waterproofing elements added into it. Then the walls can't breathe. Right. Then you get moisture, you get condensation, you get mold. And so going back to what I was saying before, like all these walls tied into this house, we lost a little tiny bit of square footage from using 6-inch walls. But what we got was moisture control. 6-inch interior walls.
Right.
We got
but
moisture.
A standard interior wall is 4 inches, so you're 2.
Yeah.
But that's 4 inches plus a half inch of drywall on each side.
Yep.
So.
And we'll finish with about a half an inch of plaster.
Right.
Interior, medium, finer gloss finish. But at the same time, like for me, it was worth it because it's soundproof. It's fireproof, it's soundproof, and it's strong. It's tied into the foundation. It's tied into the exterior walls. Like it'll be tied into the roof. And all those elements in and of themselves, one of the visions that I had was setting up a house, designing it, and then having it be a demo for making almost like a disaster shelter home. So where it could qualify under FEMA standards for being disaster resistant to whatever vectors in those areas, fire, water, flood, or fire, flood, earthquake, what have you. And so, yeah, it's been my grand experiment. And I grew up stick framing with my dad. Did a lot of renovations, did a lot of stick framing, regular housing build. And I found this, and there were enough things that translated over that made it easier. So, let's see.
So when you're building it, what do you do with plumbing and electrical?
So I did rough-in plumbing. So just underneath the slab on grade. And so I had a really great guy here. His name is Charles. He helped me with the plumbing design a little bit. And then we worked together on laying out the plumbing. And let me see if I still have the layout, because I did the layout in SketchUp too. I don't think I have that. I think I reused it for rebar placement. Yeah. So this is the floor plan that we originally did.
Mhm.
And so we just drew lines like this is where the manifold is.
Mhm.
And right through here is where the sewage connection was. So we just drew lines to all the water points, measured them out in SketchUp, framed them according to the square footage here, measured it out. And the only issue we had was a mistake that I made. And we put the floor drain or the drain for the 4 sinks.
Mhm.
We wanted it right in the middle of the wall, but I mismeasured it 6 inches off. So it's in the middle of our shower room. So we're going to build a bench over it, and it'll still all connected there. So one of the things I really liked about the block too, when I went down and visited Arizona, is they talk about like every good carpenter can hide their mistakes, you
Right.
know. And with the mistakes I made, it was actually really easy to fix.
Mhm.
So when I was laying the blocks out, like this area right here in front of the door, I got off of it. So I was off a plumb, my line was out, made a mistake, you know, and
Mhm.
so it built off a little bit, and then I built straight on above that. And so what I did is I just cut at the level where I made the mistake, cut underneath it, pressed it out, and then retacked it to the ground. And it was back in line again. And over here, I had something similar happen. And so that one I had to get a little bit more creative with, and I probably did more work than I needed to do to line it out or
Mhm.
to straighten it in line. But I got it figured out.
So,
Uh,
so how hard is it to work with the block?
you know, for me, it was always easier with another person.
Right.
You know, but even doing it yourself, um, it was easier than doing studded walls. You
Mhm.
know, when framing for me. Uh, it did take longer, but also like, you know, like I almost died earlier this year. Like I got life flighted up to Pocatello, or not Pocatello, Irmac and Idaho Falls.
Mhm.
And I did almost all my construction either with active meningitis or encephalitis, and I didn't even know it. You know? So like I was on the brink of death, and I still got it done within a reasonable amount of time. It took me a
Mhm.
lot longer. Like someone that was not in the shape that I was or recovering from it, like this spring, like you remember, I was on a walker for 6 weeks, you
Yeah.
know, and then I still rehabbed and then started building again, you know, and, you know, a healthy person probably would have taken a month to do what I did, working maybe a couple hours a day.
Mhm.
Not me though. So like that was not in the cards for me.
Right.
Um, so like that degree of relativity scales it's taken me much longer than I wanted,
Mhm.
especially like the first year, like we got the foundation done, and you know, like then that was about all we could do. And so then the next year, the next spring, sorry, then I started with laying the blocks down. Um, and then I got everything up to about 8 feet, I think it was.
Mhm.
And then winter hit and I needed to go from there. I wasn't all done like that. Um, but I was also working a couple hours a day, and then I just get absolutely exhausted. So, like, it was, you know what I'm saying? You were there for that. So, it would probably take a regular person a quarter of the time. Even when I went down to Arizona and I helped build that 2,800 or lay out the block for that 2,800 square foot house, I
Mhm.
think we got it done in like a couple days, you know? And it was just crazy how quickly it went. So I'm actually excited to see, like, once I'm fully rehabbed too, what does it look like to get a project done when I'm not fighting, you know, brain
Yeah.
inflammation and or near death. Um, but that actually was kind of something that was rough is it did affect my depth perception a bit, you know,
Right.
and that it did feel like that is what threw off some of my lines a bit.
Mhm.
And I did a pretty good job, I think. So, and you've seen it too. So,
Mhm. So the blocks, are they all shipped to you in the already cut, or do you cut the blocks? How does that work?
so when you are, let me pull up a video for this. They come in certain sizes, and they have end pieces too. But when you're cutting out your lengths and whatnot, let me mute this and quit sharing this and share this instead. Here we go. Okay, so this goes through the perfect block. So this is the example of the fire resistance. So they have a torch going up against that, and it just takes forever to deform. You'll see Kyla right here. Oh, that's not Kyla. Anyway, but you'll see they have these little pieces that they will fabricate and send to you.
Mhm.
You measure and you cut using those. And so if you need like a 3 foot or 2 foot or 1 foot, whatever you want to do, you just use the brains tooting out on me. You just use those rigs to cut it. So that guy's putting on a corner piece. And then in the corner pieces, you'll see a staple right there.
Mhm.
And you just connect them there. And then after you're done pouring the concrete and it's set through there, then you just remove the staple. So,
After it's cured.
yep, after it's cured. So that's one thing that they do that I did not, especially for the doors. But you see the thickness of those bucks there.
Mhm.
Uh, if next time I do this, that is how I would do that. So instead of running it recess into the walls, and I did a few things a little bit off. There were a lot of options on how to adapt to stuff.
Mhm.
And I did my dad actually helped me with the windows and the door bucks. And we
Mhm.
did it one of the ways they described, but it complicated it a lot. Like we could have done things a lot easier, but we didn't. And so,
And with those bucks, the way they have it, are they removed afterwards, or are they just there forever?
they're there. So you attach your door stuff into them just like a regular build.
Oh, okay.
So let's see. I'm going to go to. I'm going to see if I can pull up some of my pours. Katie took videos.
It's always nice to have a video expert.
Yeah. Let me see if I can share it through Messenger. I can't. Let's see if I can come over here. And it was interesting. We kind of had an intense pour for the first one.
Mhm.
We had an issue with concrete, and basically we got a mix with 3/4 aggregate in it, crushed instead of 3/8 or less, and so we got about half of it poured. So I'm gonna have to go in with a line pump and then get the proper mix and finish it off from here. Even though there was that mistake, the company that we went with originally for the concrete, they were pretty understanding about it. You know, like the communication issue, it being 3/4 and crushed instead of 3/8, and they had just never dealt with this block before.
Right.
So, so we got that figured out pretty well. Um,
So with a standard pour, do you always go with the line pump, or?
You know, they usually do. I talked to one of the engineers down there. I'm like, hey, can we make a boom pump work? He's like, if you do X, Y, Z, you know, to prevent blowouts. And
Mhm.
actually, it would have been perfectly fine. Like we had no blowouts at all when the concrete made it all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a 12-foot drop at the highest when that happened. So, and it's designed to be able to handle that, but you know how it goes. Like you want to
Yeah.
take precautions. And I had
Murphy's Law.
precautions for everything but the aggregate being wrong. So,
One of the biggest problems.
yeah, exactly. I don't think I'm going to be able to share this video. That stinks.
Yeah.
I might be able to do some links later on that you can put in the footnotes or link to for
Okay.
people to see the videos. But other than that, yeah, what other questions do you have for me?
So what was the top height of your roof, and why did you choose the roof angle that you did?
I'm just going to move you over to this monitor real quick so I look forward at you. There you go. So the highest point of the roof that we have, not including the thickness of the block that will be the roof, is 12 feet. So we will have 12 feet 10 inches as the max height for the roof line. And you asked why I did that?
Yeah, and why you have the roof shape that you do.
So we decided to go with a shed roof because we wanted to have an open ceiling, and we did a. Let me pull up the schematics again. So we did a beam out of the block across the kitchen area and the dining room area and the laundry room area. So let me pull that up. So when we did that, there we go. So we actually have a beam that goes all the way across here. About 8 inches. And then we actually extended this wall underneath to give it support. It's going to look a bit wonky, but that's okay.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's fine. So basically we did a beam all the way across there. We built this wall out to meet it and to brace it. And we did a 2 by 2 foot like pillar in there for the additional structural support, steel rebar reinforced, all that jazz. And they'll do lintels and beams with these blocks. And so they usually won't go past, I think it's 21, 22 feet, 24 at the most, before they have some sort of bracing and stuff like that.
Okay.
Or pillar supports. And so we are at 19 feet and 17 feet with a pretty like connected line all the way across of rebar, tied into the walls, additional support, all that jazz. So when we did that, we would have had to build this middle wall here up like an additional 6 feet. Which means we would have had to bring this wall up 6 feet.
And that's if you're going to do a standard dual sloping roof.
Yep, standard gable roof. So, and we decided not to because we didn't need to. So it also provided a little bit more space near where we wanted the lofts to be. So like it designed things a little bit better so there's more headroom towards the south side or the front wall. So yeah, that's why we did that.
So if someone did not have life-threatening issues,
yeah,
how long do you think it would take for one individual to stack the blocks and have it ready for a pour?
I'd say if they were working a couple hours a day with a full-time job and then on the weekend too, I'd say they could get it done in a summer. If
Yeah.
they're going to do like a regular roof and not do the roof side of the block or the roof out of the block, it would have been a lot less.
Mm.
If they were doing a regular frame, like wall frame, studded stuff like that, drywall, all that jazz inside of the house, like the actual perimeter wall would take them like a week or two to
Okay.
do. And then they just build into it. So
So I guess that's another question. Why did you do the interior with the perfect block, or is that a common thing for perfect block to be
it,
used interior?
it actually is not as much. When you're looking at when they build within hurricane areas or heavy earthquake areas, there's a higher likelihood of it. But that the blocks provide the fire resistance for external fires, floods, stuff like that really, really well. So a lot of people just do regular studs.
Hmm.
But I don't like to mix materials like that,
Okay.
you know? And I brought this up a little bit earlier, but Joe Stiburg talks about how when you have mixed tech or mixed materials of different degrees of water permeability, of breathability, then it can cause issues. He talked a lot
Right.
about the SIPS panelings up in Canada, where you'd have like the margin for error is so much less with certain types of advanced tech. Whether you're looking at extreme intense like water and air sealing, things like that, or R value, like the breathability of a home, like you have to be very, very specific with the application of those high tech or really advanced design materials or structural materials. And so in my mind, the way I visualized it is that, like there's not a whole lot of ability for us to really change and redesign something later on, gut out the west side or the left side of the house and then change it if we want to later.
Hmm.
We could take a concrete saw and get rid of some of these or create some space in between these bedrooms, like this.
Yeah.
Do an opening there, get rid of it. Except for all the
So,
way through to the
so
other
if
side.
you were looking to remodel your house every couple years, you'd probably want to go with a stick built interior.
Yep, I would say so.
But if you're happy
So
with your layout for forever, then that definitely makes a lot of sense to do it with the perfect block.
yeah, or if your major concern is like adding on. So like when we eventually add on to this, if we need the space for the size of our family or if the kids come home to roost, maybe one of the kids wants to raise their family there, they're having a hard time. Katie and I could add on in addition to this in this style and the pattern that they used to with courtyard homes. And then the big family could take over the main house and we could be in like a little, you know, grandparents' house or something like that. So,
Right.
like, one of the things Katie and I have talked about is doing like a 2-story addition off of here, and because we have the structural strength designed into the house, like we could easily build on the ledging of these parts that come up and over for the
Mhm.
roof that aren't visible from the street.
Right.
Um, but also we could cut it flush to the roof, or we could just leave them there and then build across here, have a platform. Um, and then add another portion off the side of the house here, have it be 2 stories, maybe do, I don't know, whatever we want to there.
Hmm.
More floor space, whatever. Um, and just keep adding if we want to, just like they used to, you know?
Like a traditional Amish house or something.
Yeah. I mean, and this is how I grew up too.
Hmm.
So, um, I'm going to pull that up real quick. I spent most of my youth helping my dad build and add onto the house every summer. And we grew up with 9 kids. and we started out with a Sears catalog, old home from 18 whatever. All right. I'm just going to share this real quick. Let's see if there's a street view.
Through all those trees.
So growing up, this was the original house right here with a front porch. And then in high school, we added on this, which was a kitchen, dining room, bathroom, my parents' master bedroom. Then we took the garage and put it off the extension of here. And that's where my uncle lived for a while. He's a VA, or he is a veteran of the Vietnam War. He's in a wheelchair. And so that's how that went. And then we have a big garage over here, even though they added this on after it was sold, the garage right here.
Yeah.
But we laid the foundation for it. We just used it as a parking pad for when we lived there. But it started out as this. And then I remember we made a porch here one year. And then within another year, it wasn't quite the way it wanted to be. It wasn't usable all year round. So we tore it down and rebuilt a Four Seasons porch here. And then year after that, we started on this addition right here. And so we just added on. And it was, I joke that my blood, sweat, and tears went into that house. And there was enough of the blood, sweat, and tears that when the time came, I was fine that they sold it. But but it has a lot of memories for me.
Yeah.
And that concept of adapting as your family grows, as the family needs, is good. I mean, we're actually, we semi-live with my parents. We have a Four Seasons trailer that we stay in on the property. That's where we sleep and keep most of our crud. And then my parents' house is on the same block that we're building on. So we use the kitchen, toilet. We have a bedroom that we rent out there that we use, too, as needed. And so, that's just kind of how it was for us. There's that kind of mindset and mentality too. My parents, a few of my siblings have stayed with them, for a while as they were in transitional parts of their life or building careers, or, their spouses were in New York or where have you for work. And then the family was back with other family, as they were trying to get a leg up on stuff.
Right.
And so for me, when I talk about building onto stuff, I don't know if I'll need to do that, in the future. I don't know if any of my kids will want to be around me when I'm older. They say it now, but I am a very skeptical person when it comes to that, I mean, I never thought I'd live with my parents, later on in life. And, now it's just a good leg up, and it's, for me, it's a value to be able to do that. So if I build on to my house to be able to provide my kids and their future families, if they choose to have them, a place to be, to either grow or build worth or save value with, that's something that means a lot to me. So that was definitely a part of this. That's also why I like the courtyard thing too, and to be absolutely frank, I like the concept of the segmental courtyard build where those, there's kind of a wing for people or for an age group. Because I like my space and my quiet. And my kids are really, my kids, you've had them over to play. They're wonderfully intense children who are very hard on stuff.
Yep.
And so this material, I joke that I built it to FEMA standards to see if it could handle the Fessler wear and tear. And
so there was, going back to electricity, You had mentioned you put your roof in the plumbing. What are you going to do with electricity or how easy is it to run lines on this build?
Let me pull up the video for that. So if you go to YouTube and you look up the perfect block, there's so many videos on there, and they do a really good job with that. Like I did my pour video, and it was meh. I'm going to be doing the roofing video for them just so they have a demo of someone doing the roof for it.
Yeah.
Because that's not as common either, even though it did not cost me a whole lot more to have basically a concrete roof that is fire resistant, and I get additional wind and earthquake resistance from having it tied into the home. So let me see if I can find that video quick for you.
And on that video, she was using it looked like a wood saw
Yeah.
or what is there? That seems kind of slow. Use that type of saw.
That is slower. I use a crappy old chainsaw, and it just cuts right through it. In theory, I should have a mask on when I do that, even though there's no like safety qualifier for that to wear a mask.
Right.
I should probably do that because you get the gray dust in the nose and whatnot.
Yeah. What are the perfect block made out of again?
So their ratio is proprietary, but it's like silicone concrete and the recycled foam that they use, or whatever something urethane that they use for transporting refrigerated goods. So this is actually a carbon, or is it carbon sequestering? But it keeps that crap out of the landfill and utilizes it in structures. So it does help prevent, lightweight, large area or large value materials from going to the landfill.
Okay.
Let me share this real quick and I'll find the part of the clip. Okay. There we go. These guys are getting interviewed here. There we go. Let me take a second to load.
So
okay. So you can see right there, that's how you do it. So they've taken a chainsaw, they've carved into the wall, and then they just put the electric in there, put a little bit of tacking adhesive in there. You'll see that they did drywall over this. We're not doing that, but that's about it. So you just carve out your lines, you run your conduit or your I forget the terming of the is it TRP electric, but it's the coated stuff.
right.
And you see this over to the right too, they have that, and we're using Uponor PEX for ours, and so it'll just get carved in there, popped in there, and then we're actually doing it on the lines where we have trim going. And so we're doing trim and plaster for most of the interior finishing. And so we are doing the electric and the plumbing just on two lines, just parallel to each other, home run around the house, or the zones that need the plumbing will get plumbed, and then we'll do a home run back to the supply for quick hot water. But anyway, and so that's how we're doing it. That way, if we ever need to check any of the utilities or anything like that, we're not chipping plaster away, having to replaster. We just pop the trim off the attachments at the wall and then pop it right back on. So
that is nice.
Yeah, I think so too. I can pause this now. Let's see. There we go. So yeah, little bits like that. And like if you want me to, I get some links. We'll send you some of our videos in the tour.
Mhm.
I did a tour for some of my friends back in South Dakota, and it was like 5 GB because I just ran my phone. I'm not super tech savvy, so I'm of the age and of the look where you might think I am, but I am not. I am not super techy at all. So, yeah.
Speak your own.
Any other questions at all?
Uh, how many are? How often do you see builds using Perfect Block? It seems like it's something that is fairly new, and that I haven't seen anyone else ever build with it.
So there's one other house in town. I think someone said like, "Oh yeah, some guy up on the summit built with this." No idea who it is. So
Oh,
there's a ski resort or two buildings that did a lot of their stuff out of the Perfect Block in Sun Valley, I believe. If you go to their website, you can actually look at a lot of their projects that they can promote and people want to just share on. But other than that, a lot of it is done in Arizona. There's a couple that are built down in Utah, a lot of them in California. A lot of contractors have swapped to this material, especially after the major fires.
mhm.
And then, so like usually it's like, oh, here's a disaster. And then someone comes in with Perfect Block. They get their insurance premium reduced by a good amount because of the resistance and stuff. And then it tends to build out from there.
So,
So,
like Paradise, California, would have been a great place to.
yeah. And they have a few houses going up out there. And, usually it takes like one or two disasters and people will swap to a material, especially once, like insurance companies start to like hike the premium,
Mhm.
like what's going on in Florida right now, or even in California too, for flood and fire in those areas, it just costs you out the nose.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people are looking at 20 to 25,000 for just their flood insurance in Florida per
Mhm.
year.
Mhm.
And, like this is such a better alternative to that. But once again, it is not as popular. Admittedly, when I talk to the guys down in Arizona, Rick specifically, he puts it out there. It's like they produce a comfortable amount. There's two other factories in the U.S. regionally, and it's kind of like not a Burger King, but they'll set you up with the molds you need, the ingredient like list, and then you're part of their network for sales too. Like if they can't produce it, they'll send the people over to like the guys in California,
Right.
where they have a place set up. And so usually around those areas, you see a lot more of those builds.
Mhm.
But the Perfect Block guys, they mostly put out educational materials.
Right.
And so they do not do a whole lot of marketing or soliciting or anything like that. There have been a few like knockoff versions of what they've done. And you can look into that yourself and see some of the issues that have been caused from it being a knockoff.
Mhm.
Um, but even then, we're looking at a pretty good price check, you know.
Yeah. How much
Um,
does a Perfect Block cost for
so
a?
it has all their pricing, but and I got some of these blocks before COVID too, and they did a pretty like low price increase over COVID.
Right.
They try to make sure that this stuff is available for people that want to do their own builds. It's
Mhm.
another reason why they don't push the marketing a lot, because they want people that are seeking to come to them, because oftentimes that just gives you a better customer, you know.
That makes sense.
And um and I get that too. But anyway, 6-inch blocks were 19 each. The 8-inch I think were 23, 24.
Mhm.
And then you add a couple bucks a square foot for grout and rebar when you calculate stuff. So like
And
from
and the size of the block is 4 feet
4 foot by 1 foot by the
by
width.
the depth.
So 6, 10, or 8.
Okay.
And so for our house, like we're coming in under 125 for our build, just with the materials and everything. But a lot of that was stuff I did with myself, help from my friends, things like that.
Right.
And it probably would have been less than that, but I did have to redo some things that that costs a little money to fix up because I just made errors. You know how it goes. So,
Oh yeah.
But it wasn't as much as what I've seen happen before, especially like with stick framing. So, but once again, I had planned everything ahead of time and I knew exactly what it was going to be, and it was set in stone once it was time to act.
Or
So,
concrete.
yeah, set in concrete. So, anyway, yeah, that was a part of it, and that in that 125 doesn't include the cost of land. So,
Okay.
and we are doing pretty a bare bones build. We'll just put it that way. You know, other than open shelving, a few cabinets, counters, like all your fixtures and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like over the next few years, we'll do a lot more built-ins, probably a rocket mass heater, things like that, that really bring it up to the cost of other things. But for now, we don't really need that. So, yeah.
So you're almost done with the main part of the build with the pour and everything.
Yep.
If you had to do it over again, is there anything else you would change?
Windows and door bucks we do differently. We do the
Mhm.
easier form of that. We made that more complicated.
Mhm.
I would have saved a lot of time if I wouldn't have tried to do all the foundation stuff myself.
Mm.
So, like, I talked to Joel McDonald about it. He helped me a bit when I was starting to fall behind and having my health stuff. I wanted to get the foundation board. He could have done that by himself within like 2 days. You know, there are certain things I would have hired out because the time and the money saving, like the grading and stuff like that. I did a lot of that myself, and then I had someone else. I had oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget his name. Travis Udy come in and then finish that for me, and stuff like that. There are just some things where the amount of time it took me to do, even getting the equipment myself, expertise for someone with a better eye. So in that kind of sense, the tools that require that touch sense, like I
Mhm.
have my own stuff I'm good at, but it would have been a time save not to have someone come and do it, or to have someone come and do it instead of me doing it myself.
No, that makes
So,
sense.
and honestly, like that's fine. I did it intentionally that way too because I'd like to keep building. I like to build some rentals and some homes to sell, things like that out of this material for people that have kind of like values. Um, and so for me, like I've done all this stuff before. I've worked on crews where I did it, and albeit it might have been 20 years ago, but still did it. And it just reminded me, like, hey, I don't want to spend my time doing that. It was not worth it. Like time wise, it set me back. So because I would have been done by now. It would have been done last year if I had delegated more
Mhm.
out. But once again, that was not my intent this time. I wanted to kind of go through the full experience of building the house from tip to tail, and just kind of, just get a good feel for it. That way, I'm a systems person. Later on, I'll kind of know what needs to go where, like how to stage things, how to really facilitate the flow of a build. And I
Mhm.
really needed to kind of suffer through the full experience of a house build this time to prepare myself for being able to do this for other people.
Right.
And that was about it. So that's the thing I would change is when I do this again, I'll definitely be delegating some things out and paying someone else to do things that just didn't need to do myself. So,
Fair enough.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, Seth. Your
Yeah,
house
thanks.
is awesome, and I can't wait to see it 100% finished.
Yeah, me too. My wife also. So, she's been pretty great about all this too. She, for a city girl,
Mhm.
that this is a non-traditional build for her.
Mhm.
She's really kind of latched her teeth into it. We'll put it that way. She likes this. When she walks around the house and she does the floor plan, like just kind of sweep, like it's good for her. And that feeling of, even with the part of the pour that we got done,
Yeah.
like you can feel the solidness more on the walls now. There's substantialness to it, and it affects the sound quality, things like that. And so,
Oh, that was one thing I didn't ask. With those interior walls the way they are, what is the sound quality in the house?
so technically, those blocks can be used for soundproofing, like soundproofing, like in a recording studio.
Mhm.
And so I have no idea what the measurement for soundproofing is, but I tried yelling at you multiple times from one bedroom to another, even with open windows and doors in a hallway, and you still couldn't hear me. So,
Yeah, with them being as porous as they are, um, that makes a lot of sense that it would be almost a recording studio level
yeah,
soundproofing, because just in my office here, because I have standard drywall, there's a bit of an echo in it.
yeah, yep. And that does not happen. We might have to put some rugs down for the reverb off the floor. We're
Yeah.
doing sanding and staining of the concrete initially for the flooring, especially since we have that radiant floor heat too,
Mhm.
and just for cost. And then when the kids are older, if we ever have a pet or anything like that inside, and we kind of figure out wear and tear and what we like, then we'll do a nicer flooring once the kids are probably out of the house.
I don't know, a concrete floor with a pet, that's not a bad idea either.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
easy to clean up any mess that the pet would make.
And we actually did so in the kitchen and in the bathrooms, we have our strategic floor drains. Same thing in the utility closet. I've seen a few like hot water heaters like rupture and everything floods. And so we just put a floor drain, floor drain, floor drain. So anyway,
That makes sense.
yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to share before we end for the evening?
I think that's it. Um, I'll try to give you some videos to link to here because I know I mostly worked off of other reference material
Uh-huh.
and videos and stuff. But like if you like construction and you like the concept of stacking block, definitely check out the Perfect Block website and their YouTube channel. They have a lot of really good like learning, processing information there where they're like, hey, this is how you do this. Hey, this is how you do that. Hey, these are all the options you have for finishing. Super easy. So anyway, well, thanks for interviewing me, Lauren. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. I will talk to you later, Seth.
All right.
All right. And that was Seth Fessler. He built his own house while having life-threatening medical issues, and with this material, it seems to be really awesome in that, one, you can build it yourself. Two, it's less expensive. Three, it's mold resistant, rodent resistant, wind resistant, fire resistant, earthquake resistant, meteor resistant. I don't know about that one, but yeah, really awesome. Um, can't say any more. Um, that's all I've got for tonight. I'll see you later. Okay, bye.